Coming up, the Brooklyn Nets shocked the NBA world Tuesday night, trading Mikal Bridges to the New York Knicks for a monster package. In a separate deal, also regain control of their future first-round picks from the Houston Rockets. We react to all of that, how it came together, what it means for Brooklyn in the short and long term after the theme music. What is up, Nets world? We're back here on the Believe in Nets podcast on the Believe Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Erik Slater, Brooklyn Nets beat reporter for ClutchPoints.com. And my goodness, what a night for the Brooklyn Nets. They shocked the entire NBA world. There's no other way to put it. They shocked those close to the Nets organization. They shocked those across the river with the New York Knicks. They shocked everybody around the association by trading Mikal Bridges, perceived as their franchise cornerstone, to the crosstown rival New York Knicks in a monstrous deal in which they receive 4 unprotected first-round picks from the Knicks. They receive 1 protected first-round pick from Milwaukee via the Knicks, and they received an unprotected first-round pick swap, as well as Bojan Bogdanovic, but not the important part of the deal. But my initial reaction, and this is off the cuff, a trade reaction pod. I have no notes in front of me, just reacting with the raw feelings of the deal. I'm absolutely stunned. It's a stunner. There's no other way to put it. A trade between the Nets and the Knicks of this magnitude, trades between the Nets and the Knicks don't happen. They don't. But a trade between the Nets and the Knicks involving a player of this magnitude is really unprecedented. The two teams haven't traded with each other until since 1983. And, my initial reaction when I saw the Woj bomb come across my phone was, okay, the Knicks gave up a lot, but more so from the Nets perspective, I say, wow, if you're going to trade Mikal Bridges and you're the Nets, why don't you trade him to the Houston Rockets, who have been the rumored trade partner dating back to the trade deadline? They have control of your picks. Why would you trade him to the Knicks, and make your team infinitely worse with the Rockets having control of your first round picks and you don't have the ability to tank? And then the next Woj bomb, another tweet from Shams Charania comes out detailing another trade between the Nets and the Rockets. And this is where the whole picture clicks into focus and you really get a sense of what Shawn Marks just pulled off. The trade with the Rockets for the Nets it's kind of too complicated almost to go through all of the different picks because it's not even clear entirely what was given up. But pretty much the Nets swapped the majority of their Phoenix Suns picks that they got as part of the Kevin Durant trade for control of their first round picks in 2025 and 2026, giving them the ability to tank the next couple of seasons and really launch themselves into a full rebuild. So, effectively, Shawn Marks, dating back to, last trade deadlines, a lot of people since the Nets acquired Mikal Bridges at the 2023 trade deadline have been calling for Shawn Marks to reset, to, properly rebuild, go through the draft, and all of that centered on the Houston Rockets and getting their picks back. And fans who have been calling for that, you got to be happy tonight because he did it in a fashion that, I don't think many people could have saw coming by making 2 simultaneous trades during which he gets incredible value for Mikal Bridges while also, getting those picks back from the Houston Rockets, giving yourself the ability to fully lean into a tank. So you really get the best of both worlds in this situation because the deal that many people were anticipating was you trade Mikal Bridges and you get, control of your picks back and you figure it out that way. But what Marks was able to do was get even better value for Bridges from the New York Knicks and then leverage those Phoenix picks to get the control of the first round picks back. So really getting the best of both worlds there. And, evaluating just where the Nets stand now, I tried to put together a list and tweet out where the Nets stand in terms of first round picks. I think I might have gotten a couple wrong and I've been editing it because information has just been coming out as we go here. But pretty much the Nets are set up with, I think, 15 first round picks over the next 7 years. And, that's incredible in itself. And that's before they even look to get, more value for veterans that they have left on their roster. Dorian Finney-Smith and Cam Johnson, 2 guys who I'd be shocked if, aren't on the move in the near future this offseason. So, 15 first-round picks set up, control of, I think that's now 4 first-round picks in the 2025 draft, which is perceived as a loaded draft. So, Cooper Flagg, Ace Begley, Dylan Harper, those guys at the top of the draft. That's why you make a move like this, because they are giving themselves the ability to tank and potentially draft high-end lottery talent for, the first time in a very long time. The last time the Nets had a pick high in the draft that they actually made for themselves, I think, was Derek Favors, who didn't work out. But that just gives you a glimpse. I think that was 2011. That gives you an idea of how long it's been since the Nets have actually picked at the top of the draft. And if you're looking for a draft to do it, this 2025 draft is loaded. I mean, Cooper Flagg, workout videos came out of Cooper Flagg at Duke and what he's able to do. Those workout videos may have been enough for Shawn Marks to reevaluate and say, hey, man, we need to look at this. But that ultimately might not have been what did it, because another layer in this is Mikal Bridges pulling a fast one on the Nets. Mikal Bridges, who's been reported as the franchise cornerstone for this team. We're going to build forward with him. We have these Phoenix picks. We want to lure another star. We have all this cap space in 2025. All the things the organization has put out, the messaging, all the things that me and many others have documented on this podcast. Mikal Bridges looked at it and said, no, thank you. And all the jokes, throughout last season, there were plenty of jokes of, Mikal Bridges playing against the Knicks. His body language isn't great. He's on the Roommate show with Josh Hart and Jalen Brunson. Josh Hart's clowning him, saying they're holding you hostage. A lot of Nets fans were joking around, saying, or maybe not even joking around after this, but saying, hey, Mikal looks like he wants to go to the Knicks. Mikal won't stick up for the Nets. Mikal really wants to be over there in New York. And on some level, everybody was like, okay, obviously he'd like to be in New York with the Knicks, with all of his best friends from Villanova. They're playing great. But now Mikal Bridges, fans who are saying that stuff are looking pretty good, because he pulls one on the Nets of forcing his way out to the Knicks. This is via Ian Begley, who SNY's Ian Begley, who does great work and had great intel on this, put out a few different tweets on this and said the Mikal Bridges deal came together quickly after Bridges informed the Nets that he wanted to be a Knick. Bridges was prepared to sign with the Knicks, and his side was prepared to use that leverage to keep other teams from trading for him, per SNY sources. Another tweet from Begley: Nets surely didn't want to trade Mikal Bridges to the Knicks, but Bridges' side was prepared to force the issue by telling teams he wanted to be with the Knicks, per SNY sources. Bridges' side made it clear to Brooklyn that he wanted to be in New York, reunited with Villanova teammates Brunson Hart and DiVincenzo. So Mikal Bridges forces his way out, and, I'm mildly surprised that with Mikal Bridges putting out that messaging and wanting to go to the Knicks, privately, but being prepared to leverage himself to go to the Knicks, that the Knicks were, that the Nets were able to get this much from the Knicks, because, 4 unprotected first-round picks and a protected first-round pick, basically 5 first-round picks and a first-round pick swap. That's a lot to give up for a player of Mikal Bridges. And I'm not saying that he's not going to be great with the Knicks and the Knicks aren't going to be, a championship contender next season and all that. But, that is a Godfather offer if I've ever seen one. And, Godfather offer is a term that's important here because, from information that I've gotten and things people I've talked to in and around the Nets organization, around the league as a whole, the stance and, the viewpoint on Bridges and the Nets was that it was going to take a Godfather type offer to get the Nets to reevaluate and to get the Nets to move off of him. Now, I think Bridges, not signaling to the team that he didn't want to be there and wanting to go to the Knicks, that obviously was step one. And they're having the Nets having to reevaluate and say, this isn't going to work out. We're going to have to move off this guy. He doesn't want to be here. But step 2 was still getting that Godfather offer. And, probably the messaging was to Bridges, keep this quiet. If you want to get out of here, we need to get a haul for you. And the New York Knicks came to the table and they offered a Godfather offer if I've ever seen one. As I said, 5 first-round picks and a pick swap, just incredible value for a player like Mikal Bridges, who, I think everybody agrees is a very good player, but, calling him a star is, up for debate. He's on the fringe. He's never been an all-star. To give up that much, I'm kind of surprised that the Knicks gave up that much, to be honest, because the Knicks were positioned to potentially go after another superstar in the coming year or two. They obviously didn't want to wait, which, kudos to them for not wanting to wait and sit on their hands as they've done for, years and say, oh, we're going to wait for, a Giannis. We're going to wait, Paul George this offseason or whoever. We're going to wait for one of those guys. They were proactive. But man, they gave up a lot, and the Nets reap the rewards of that. And we'll get into a little bit, I'm not going to go too long with this because I still have a lot of stuff to write and recap trade grades, stuff along those lines. We'll get into more about what this means for the Nets-Knicks rivalry. But, just taking a step back and looking at where the Nets are with this Kevin Durant trade, because that's where this all stemmed from. I mean, the Nets walk away from this Kevin Durant trade. It'll get a little bit convoluted because of the swaps of how many picks they gave up with Houston and those Phoenix picks to get back their own picks. But, taking a step back, the Nets got netted overall for that Kevin Durant trade 9 first-round picks and 2 swaps. And that's before they even get whatever they get for Cam Johnson. So that is, I don't know off the top of my head, but that has to be probably the biggest haul for a single player in the history of the NBA. And Shawn Marks being able to do that and get that much value while also gaining control of his own draft capital from the Rockets in simultaneous deals and fully resetting this organization. It's going to hurt in the short term for some Nets fans because the team is going to be very bad and it's going to be a tanking team. But this 2025 draft, the pick stash that the Nets have, the cap space they project to have in 2025, they have immense flexibility to take this in a number of directions how they want to. And while that might hurt in the short term for some Nets fans, they are set up very, very well in the mold of how an Oklahoma City was set up. Obviously Oklahoma City made the star trade and landed SGA, who turned into just a superstar, an MVP candidate. But OKC has all these picks, and they had the ability to take swings on young talent. And the Nets are set up in that mold while also being in the New York market, which we know, is always going to stand to benefit them in terms of recruiting players. So, they're set up nicely. They're set up very nicely. And just looking at that flexibility a little bit deeper, as I said, the Nets are set up like next season, it's pretty clear is going to be a tank season. If the Nets are going to, be bad and try to land near the top of that lottery in a draft, as I said, that has Cooper Flagg, who looks just like an incredible prospect right now, Ace Bailey, Dylan Harper, other guys of that mold. And, from there, however that plays out, they have a number of directions that they can take this, because say they are to land one of those players, they're set up. I wrote articles about this in the last week that are still applicable. Based on certain roster decisions, they're set up to open anywhere from $50 to $80 million in cap space next summer. So, with that, those projections might change, based on them setting Bridges and taking back Bogdanovich, who's an expiring contract. I still need to do the math of all that. But basically, the Nets are going to have a ton of cap space next year, next offseason. So depending on how the draft goes, they could look to bring in other players there. They could look to roll that cap space over to the following season by signing players to one-year deals. But basically, they're going to have cap space to use how they please, next offseason or going into the future. And they also, as I said, are going to have, they have 15 first-round picks after the 2025 draft. They'll have, 11 or 12 first-round picks over the next 7 years after that. So they're set up to build this out however they want. It could be a long rebuild where they could be, based on how next year goes and how that draft goes, if they take a few more years along those lines, they could take a look and try to take a swing on a young star via trade or via free agency, however that comes available. But they have numerous directions of where they can go. And I think next year, possibly the next 2 years, are really where they're going to look to be bad. But after that, they have ability to maneuver to expedite this or to take it a longer route, however they see fit. And, it's just interesting to see Shawn Marks be able to pull this off, because I've talked about it throughout, the last year of how poorly this last Nets season went. And a lot of people were calling for Nets jobs. Fans, local media, national media couldn't believe that after James Harden, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, all asking out of the team within a year span, that he still had a job, because, Shawn Marks he's going into his 9th year as GM of the Nets. He has one playoff series win. There's obviously a lot of different encompassing factors with the COVID, dilemmas and all that going on that played into that. And I'm not going to relitigate it, but, a lot of people were surprised that he still had a job. And I was on this podcast talking several times about how if they are to trade Mikal Bridges and they are to reset, and that means that they're going to let Shawn Marks lead a rebuild and go in feasibly to his 9th, 10th, 11th seasons as GM with his track record in the past. And, it's kind of unprecedented for an owner to let a GM do that, with this little playoff success. It really, it was unprecedented. And if, just from a casual fan or somebody, it would shock them. But the other layer to this is that if you're looking at how, where Shawn Marks has had success in his career, where he's been able to do things really well, it has been rebuilding an organization. He took a Nets team that had no draft picks and pretty much no young talent after the Billy King trade with Boston. And he rebuilt that in less than 3 years into a situation that was attractive enough to sign Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving in free agency. So he did that with no picks, no draft picks, not a lot of young talent. Now you're giving Shawn Marks not unlimited draft picks, but pretty damn near as close as you're going to get to the NBA. You're giving him some good young talent in Cam Thomas, Noah Clowney, some of these other players, and you're giving him immense cap flexibility. All those things working together, based on his track record of how he's able to do it the last time, it's a really good situation for Shawn Marks and the Nets moving forward. And it's one that I don't think a lot of people saw coming because, as I said, for the Nets to kind of, take the medicine, swallow the pill, and reset didn't seem like something they wanted to do. Who knows, if Mikal Bridges said he wanted to stay with the Nets and he didn't force their hand to the New York Knicks, who knows how this all would have come together. I'd like to think that, they saw the writing on the wall. And I've talked about this on prior podcasts of, was this plan of them trying to pursue stars with Bridges really viable? I did a podcast recently with Mike Scotto of Hoops Hype where I said, are the Nets all in on a Donovan Mitchell trade? Or were they all in on potentially being the guy that they try to acquire this offseason? Because if not, I didn't see the plan for next season and how they were going to improve and attract stars in 2025. It seems like a really dicey proposition. And once the news came out that Donovan Mitchell, it seems like he's trending towards an extension with the Cleveland Cavaliers, I asked the question, are they all in on him? Where does that leave them? And it seems like maybe Mikal Bridges saw that, also with having to see all of his friends across the bridge in New York the last season and said, I want to go play with my friends in New York. And, if you're just looking at Mikal Bridges' thought process, that's understandable. I don't fault him for wanting to go to play with, his friends. He has 3 of his closest friends from Villanova who he won a national title with across the bridge on a crosstown rival, having all this success to the toast of the town, clowning him. That's really difficult. So I understand where he's coming from. But man, Mikal Bridges, I don't think he cares, but in the viewpoint of Nets fans who were already, a lot of them were trashing him last season, calling him mid-Kale and all these things, which I thought was really unfair because I thought he was just miscast on this team. But, the body language down the stretch of last season wasn't great. He had a tough time, with being miscast, and I'm not faulting for him personally. But Nets fans, after seeing that, after how they were treating him down the stretch, for him to demand to go to that crosstown rival and kind of confirm the criticisms and the suspicions that a lot of Nets fans had about his desire and his lack of commitment to the Nets last year, man, that is a rivalry in itself and a storyline now that just adds a complete whole new unbelievable layer to the Knicks-Nets rivalry, because Nets fans have never needed any motivation to root against the Knicks. Nets have always been seen as a little brother in this city. Nets fans, I think, always have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder when it comes to how Knicks fans have viewed themselves over the last 20 years prior to this season, during which, if I might point out, they were the worst organization in the NBA in terms of win percentage. From 2001 to 2021, the Knicks were actually the worst team in the NBA in terms of win percentage and playoff series wins. And they've always, throughout that, still had a superiority complex, in regard to the Nets, because obviously they're the biggest team in the town. It's always going to be that way, the same way that it is with the Lakers and the Clippers. So Nets fans, as I said, have always rooted against the Knicks, will always root against the Knicks. But now they have Mikal Bridges, who most Nets fans are not going to see in a kind light after this. And they also have control of the New York Knicks' future. the Nets now directly benefit from the New York Knicks potentially losing basketball games. So, this is unprecedented. Trades like this, as I said, don't happen. And for there to be that extra layer of the rivalry between the Nets and the Knicks, of them able to, directly benefit from the Knicks, having any lack of success, man, it's going to be really fun. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I need to get into with this trade. Let me take a sip of water here. Oh, man, we're getting close to 1 a.m. Been really busy trying to recap all of what went down here. And to close it out, kind of taking a forward look at what's next for the Nets, Shawn Marks isn't going to get a break anytime soon. He's going to be very busy. The draft's tomorrow, and, reports indicate that he's been active in trying to acquire a pick in this year's draft. Who knows how much this changes that, but some more important business to look forward to. The Nets still have veterans on this team who are going to have some trade value and who they are going to be, looking to move off of, assumingly to maximize their draft capital and young player stash entering next season. And the three guys that come to mind immediately are Dorian Finney-Smith, Cam Johnson, and Dennis Schroeder. And when you look at the value that those guys could have, Dorian Finney-Smith is under contract next season for, I think, around $14 million. Then he has a $15 million player option in 2025-26. The Nets were said to be asking for 2 first-round picks for him at last year's trade deadline. I don't think he fetches that much, but he's a guy that they're going to be able to get value for. He's a proven track record playoff guy, 3-and-D wing, who's had success at a high level and high leverage situations and will be a seamless fit on almost any contender. So I'd expect a lot of teams, the Vultures, to be circling on him. And Cam Johnson, a guy who severely underwhelmed last season in the first year of his contract, but Nets fans seem to have this idea that Cam Johnson's contract, he signed for 4 years, $94.5 million, but the first year of that deal, it was front loaded. So the biggest cap hit came in the first year of that deal. And then it's descending, the next 3 seasons with the cap set to go up. So his cap hit's getting lower each year. I just talked about this on my last podcast with Yossi Goslin, who's just, a cap expert and plugged in on all of it. He said that, I view Cam Johnson's contract as a great contract. A little rich for me, the word great contract, but Yossi knows his stuff. So he said he views that as a good contract moving forward if Cam Johnson can return to the level of play that he was accustomed to throughout his career. So he's a guy that who also, could have trade value, this summer. And then look at the final guy, Dennis Schroeder. He's on an expiring contract. Do I think that the Nets are, going to get anything significant for him? No. But he played well to end the year, and he's a guy that, could have at least some value. So between the 3 of those players, the Nets could be looking to make, they will be looking to make more moves, and they could be looking at, adding something more significant, in overall in the terms of, picks or young players or a little bit of both. So the Nets still have some business there. And then after that, it's really going to be the kids, and it's going to be, whoever they can maybe come away with in this year's draft. And it's going to be Cam Thomas getting the keys to the offense as, he did down the stretch of last season, as a lot of fans have been hoping for. The Nets will see what they have in him. The Nets also will see what they have in Noah Clowney, Day'Ron Sharpe, some other young guys they have some decisions to make on, but also Nick Claxton. Last thing that I want to touch on before I get out of here and go work on some more articles and writing. Nick Claxton's still an unrestricted free agent, and who knows how this impacts him. The expectation before this was that Claxton will be back in a Nets uniform, and I still expect that to be the case just because, I've spoken about the lack of suitors for him, amongst cap space teams this offseason. The 2 that really I thought could threaten for him would be the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Detroit Pistons. So, those 2 still could look to steal him away, but Oklahoma City has been more tied to Isaiah Hartenstein up to this point. So we'll see how they play that. And Detroit, could offer him a ton of money. And if they come over the top and they offer Claxton, $23 to $25 million per year, that might be enough to make, to force the Nets to maybe reevaluate and say that we don't want to pay him that kind of money, especially when we're going into a full reset the way that they are. But I'm kind of skeptical that Detroit, already having Jalen Duren, as I've spoken about on previous pods, is going to go that route. It kind of sounds like they might be looking at some other, positions. They desperately need shooting alongside Cade Cunningham and just some other, asset, ways to pick up assets with their cap space. So, the Nets have a lot of business ahead of them. They've got to move off some of these veterans. They got to figure out what they're doing with Claxton. They're going to have to fill out the rest of the roster, and I'm expecting them to take a lot of shots, obviously, on young talent and see what they have. But a busy night, and I'll have more coverage of this tomorrow. I'm going to try to get a guest on the pod to talk more about this trade. Also, we'll obviously be recapping the draft and talking about what this means moving forward with all of the moves that they're going to make and just overall for direction and reflecting on this as more news and more reports come out. But hope you guys enjoyed this emergency pod instant reaction to just a wild night in Nets world. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you don't already, make sure to subscribe to Believe in Nets on all streaming platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Smash that like button. Leave a 5-star review if you can. Also, subscribe to my YouTube channel at Erik Slater NBA, where I'll be posting all these podcasts as well as interview clips, film breakdowns, and more. Follow me on Twitter at Erik Slater _. You can find all of my work, constant news, updates, analysis. I'll be posting trade grades for this deal on clutchpoints.com. A lot more coverage coming for you soon. The Nets are making moves, and I don't expect it to stop. And I'll have all of that in the coming weeks on Believe in Nets. Talk to you guys soon.